What's up, SDS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And tonight, you're in for a treat, not only because it's a special Sunday night live edition of Carm on the Case. She is here in the flesh. I know our diehard SDS Nation loves to see Carm, and here she is. First, a little bit about what we are talking about this evening, and then I will introduce you to the guests of honor. Ellen Greenberg was a 27-year-old first-grade teacher at Juniata Park Academy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At approximately 6:40 p.m. on January 26, 2011, Ellen was pronounced dead as a result of 20 stab wounds, including 10 to the back of her head and neck. In addition, there were 11 bruises in various stages of resolution on her right arm, abdomen, and right leg. And despite all the evidence to the contrary, the medical examiner, Dr. Marlon Osbourne, who we'll talk about, ruled Ellen Greenberg's death a suicide. He later admitted that he had originally planned on ruling the manner of death either a homicide or undetermined, but changed it to suicide at the insistence of the police. That's a little odd. Evidence shows that at least 2 of the 20 stab wounds were inflicted after Ellen's heart stopped beating, suggesting she was attacked after she had already died. Lawyers for the Greenbergs are now hoping to get Ellen's case re-reviewed by the Chester County District Attorney's Office. Greenberg's family has long sought to get her suicide ruling changed to homicide or undetermined. Best guests here to break down this story, the ones who truly know it the best. We are welcomed now by Josh and Sandy Greenberg, Ellen's parents. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Gavin Fish is the other gentleman with the guitar in the background. He's not just any old guy. He began investigating unsolved crimes in 2019 when a friend suggested that it might be a fun way to make a YouTube channel, and true crime was something he was very passionate about. Gavin excels at unearthing documents that previously had never seen the light of day. He has obsessively looked at Ellen's case and arguably knows more about it than anyone else. So,
except the Greenbergs.
Except the Greenbergs, of course.
Yeah.
First to you, Josh Greenberg. 2011, it is 2023 today. How are you doing now?
We're doing the best we can. We're fighting for justice for our daughter, which I think makes life easier for me to handle. There are certain aspects of her death which I don't handle well. I don't like going to the cemetery, for instance, but I do other things to replace that. But the fact that I have a mission, a purpose, the fact that I want to get justice for my daughter keeps me going. I really believe that. I do have some things I do that are rather probably, I don't know if I should do them. Namely, I will talk to everyone and anyone I meet. And if I go to a new situation, they say, well, talk to me. Do you have any children? They shouldn't ask me that because I've been their ears now. Because I really want, I don't know who could really help us the most here. With people who have tried are doing a great job, but there may be others out there. And I'll give you for instance, you opened up something that I have a particular interest in, those bruises on my daughter's body. Those were consistent with abuse. And if she was being abused by somebody before she was murdered, maybe there are other people, other women who were abused by that same person. And I'd love for one of them to come forward. And that's what I've been waiting for and hoping for. But that's one of my pet goals, missions, you name it, something that really bothers me and why it hasn't been discussed and emphasized.
Carmela, you would like to jump in here as you're...
I know I have a question, and I'm sure that you will say, of course, but are you involved with any victims of crime families?
I would say not
or groups.
I would say not really to families. I have, over the past 11 years, among the many people and organizations we've talked to, have spoken to people who are connected with various groups like that, like parents of murdered children, things like that in the Philadelphia area. So we have, but the contact there, the real help that we've gotten has been from the media, from you guys and women. You have carried the torch farther than we could have ever imagined or paid for, I would even say. In fact, we did hire a PR firm, which we let go after about 2 or 3 weeks because the media was doing such a great job. We have not, except for 1 month, paid for any professional media help. Gavin, he'll tell you that he's not, he's not a professional. You guys aren't professionals. You are to an extent. I don't mean to slight your credentials. It's just, you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. We did not pay you to do this show tonight.
I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the case. We pivoted into true crime with the murder of Dan Markel, who was a Harvard-educated law professor who was shot and killed twice in his driveway. Got to know his family, and that's how we pivoted into true crime. They have had, the assistance of tremendous global media, and they've been profiled on Dateline several times, on Nightline. On 2020. Has Ellen's story been on Dateline or 2020?
Not yet, because the story won't be. We have contact with 48 Hours and 2020.
Yes.
And they really don't do any stories till there is a conclusion, because everyone in this world is afraid of the same thing: legal repercussions. As unfortunately Mr. Fish can tell you, the legal repercussions can be costly and very upsetting. So we have been in touch a lot with 48 Hours, especially, and some others. But we have been on this story. It seems to me, we were on the other night on News Nation, and he also started out that this is a story, but it really isn't. This is a story that's way out there. When my wife and I started on this, we had a little discussion that we didn't agree on. I felt 1,000 people who Ellen knew would follow it. Well, this story has been followed by millions of people. Who was the podcaster you mentioned the other night to me? The woman who had 1 million hits on the story.
Oh, Kendall Ray.
Kendall Ray has had over 1 million hits. We've been on some cable things. We've been on news reports. We're going to do on Friday. We're going to do a local news for ABC with a commentator or a reporter. I don't know what Dennis Owens in Harrisburg, and he's planning to push it to Philadelphia. So we have been out there. Larry Sperano up in a corner of Scranton in Pennsylvania has had a lot of followers. This has been seen. 150,000 people have signed our change.org petition to reopen the case. 150,000.
And we're going to do our best to help get the word out. That's my friend Chris Cuomo had you on News Nation. I'm convinced he is now watching Surviving the Survivor. Maybe he saw our first episode. And I'll have to keep competitive tabs on him. But what no one has that we do have is the secret sauce, and that is Steve Cohen, who is listening to this right now. Steve is my partner in crime, and there is no one better in all the land at getting the word out, getting media attention, connecting with the right people. So we are going to stay on this and do our best to help get justice for Ellen Greenberg. Who's Remain writes, thank you for addressing this case. Ellen and her family are long overdue for justice. And to Josh's point here, Sky Ricky writes, many interesting YouTube shows on Ellen Greenberg. For example, Peter Hyatt analysis of the 911 call, and Pat Brown, who's a very well-known criminal profiler, YouTube giving analysis of this case as well. And then you go to this from Mr. Raven, who is Ellen? We're going to get into that tonight, so all of you know who she is and help us to, as I said, exact justice for the Greenberg family. Gavin, to you, how did you get involved with this case and with the Greenberg parents specifically?
I had a viewer. I was working on a case out of Buffalo, New York that was in a different way, but equally egregious, where the system was abusing the family, the survivors of a victim of a homicide. And one of my viewers said, if you're interested in this case, you should check out the Ellen Greenberg case. I think he was a local to Philadelphia. And so I started digging in, and long before I ever met Josh and Sandy and the rest of their crew, I went to the court website, and because they had filed a lawsuit, and I purchased everything that had ever been filed and dug through all of that. I think it was about 1,900 pages. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, I think my interest in Ellen is just kind of paternal. When I see a young woman like this that could be my daughter. Now, Ellen's actually closer to my age. She couldn't actually be my daughter, but I think of a 20-something-year-old young woman whose life was taken in just an obviously violent, homicidal manner. I just kind of feel like that could be my daughter, and I got hooked on it and have been studying it ever since.
Maybe very briefly, like in a telegram form, we should give an idea, because even though many people heard about this situation, there are people out there who don't know what we are talking about.
We are going to get into it. Carmela loves to produce the show as well. And everyone says, be nice to your mother. I'm being as sweet as apple pie.
He's not even kicking me under the table.
As sweet as we can be. There's a reason I have my hand behind her back here, everyone. I see you, says Philadelphia. This case is full of corruption and politics, followed by Artemis. This is such a sad case, very corrupt case. I hope justice for Ellen comes very soon. Sandy, that's my mother-in-law's name, and she happens to be visiting. So it has a very, very nice place in my heart. You were quoted when Ellen was found dead as your world going dark. Has your world found a little bit of light since then? Yeah. Or is it just as hard today as it was in 2011?
No, I mean, when I got the news, I probably went into shock, and we were given such little information, and we've been trying to put the pieces back together and understand the situation as best we can, because even though, according to the Philadelphia police, Ellen committed suicide, they're withholding all kinds of information and playing all sorts of dirty tricks to withhold videos, documentation, etc. If they have nothing, what are they hiding and why are they hiding it?
I have a question. Maybe Gavin can help me with this. I believe suicide is not a crime in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Suicide is not a crime in any of the 50 states of the United States.
Then why are they using that ploy, the ploy of the exception to the Sunshine Law, not to give us the police records? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the answer to that question, as far as
maybe we should go back. That a Sunshine Law says you have the access to police records. Many states have an exception to police records, though. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in the state of Pennsylvania, it's called the Right to Know Law. I've become a little bit of an expert on different states' laws. Typically, what happens in most states in the United States is there is an exemption to investigative files for open cases. Once a case is closed, you typically don't have that exception anymore. In the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth has the worst public records law, maybe in the top 3 worst public records law in the nation, in that that exemption never expires, even if a case is closed. So what is happening is the Philadelphia Police Department is not releasing the investigation files to the Greenbergs because they invoke this exemption that they don't have to. Now, the Right to Know Law does not say that they cannot release the information. They can. They just will not, because they invoke that exemption.
So they're withholding the records of a non-criminal case,
Of a non-crime.
that's over,
Yeah.
that they solved theoretically.
Yeah.
Um,
To me, by the way, that's just like a shining beacon showing that the people who have investigated this believe this to be a homicide. Because most of the time, if I mean, investigators are all people, right? These are all people that have mothers and they have daughters and they have family members, right? They feel some kind of empathy on this. Typically, they will release the records to the family members in pretty short order, because they want those family members to feel that, what we call closure. I don't think there is such thing as closure, but
well, they also want to show that they did a good job, theoretically,
yeah,
I assume.
in this case, they either believe that Ellen was murdered, I think, or they just don't want anybody to see what terrible work they did.
Carmela.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Camilla.
When they give you the answer that they are not releasing it, do they give any kind of justification for their rejection, or do they legally have to give a
Half
justification?
the time they don't even answer us. They just are hoping that we're going to disappear.
Well, and Carmel, that's a really good question, because in the state of Pennsylvania, this is another reason that the right to know law is a terrible public records law. Unlike almost every other state in the nation, they can ignore you and deem that a denial. Mm-hmm. Whereas in every other state, they cannot ignore you. They have to deny you, but they won't give you the only reason that they'll give for a denial, if they give it at all, is that under the right to know law, paragraph this, subparagraph that, section this, we don't have to.
So Melissa writes, this case is so intense. I feel so bad for her parents. No way she did this to herself. Followed by Mr. Raven, stabbing 20 times shows hate and probably someone she was close to. So let's go back in time here. I know it's not the most comfortable subject to go back to January 26. On that day, my understanding was Ellen Greenberg, who was a school teacher, left. There was a blizzard going on. She lived in a
nor'easter.
It was big. It was a nor'easter.
Nor'easter, big storm. She lived in the tiny little neighborhood of Manayunk, a suburb of Philadelphia. She stopped to get gas, which right there tells you she was planning ahead. She went home to do some wedding planning. She was engaged to a man named Sam Goldberg, who, as far as I know, is now remarried and living in New York City, and was making a fruit salad. And Gavin, can you pick it up from there and kind of tell us what happened the rest of that day from, all accounts?
Well, I think the main claim, the story that was told by Mr. Goldberg, was that he left the apartment to go down. Let's see, Josh and Sandy, they were on the 6th floor, right?
Correct.
So he went down to the 1st floor to work out in the gym. Then he says, after working out in the gym for half an hour, 45 minutes, he goes back up to the apartment. And his story is that the door is locked from the inside with one of these locks. I don't know if you recognize these, right? I keep this on my desk ever since I did that. Ever since I did that experiment on my door,
Gavin,
this is now my fidget toy.
Put that a little closer to the camera, Gavin, just so we can get one more look. There
well,
you go.
We should tell you that Gavin recreated the swing lock break-in, and he took a plank of wood off the house door.
I've got a 120-year-old house that is now.
So you can imagine what his lovely bride thinks of Gavin that day.
That's devotion, though. It's devotion. I like those stories.
But anyway, his story is it was locked from the inside with one of these locks. He texted her, he called her, he emailed her at varying levels of frustration
and anger.
Yeah. And then his story was, according to the police report or the medical examiner's report, he got a doorman, a security guard, to go up with him and break open the door. That's his story. Yeah, and Sandy and Josh are going, no, that is not what happened. But that was the story that he told.
We'll modify or comment on various parts of this.
Yeah. So then he says that, he was witness breaking down the door. He goes in, he sees Ellen in the in the kitchen, and he can't tell what's wrong with her, calls 911. And during the course of the 911 call, magically sees what he had missed from the beginning, which was a big Cutco knife sticking out of her chest.
He did see the knife until he was actually opening up her clothing to administer CPR. And that's when he saw the knife for the first time.
That's the story. Now, by the way, Josh and Sandy have been very gracious with me, and their team has shared everything with me. I've seen the scene photos. You cannot miss, like, the very first thing that you see, that you notice, is a knife coming out of Ellen's chest.
And is it true that he made a call before calling 911? Is that correct?
That is
Several calls were made
several.
before 911.
Do we know to who?
Yes.
I think that would be something for you investigators to look further into, is how many people did he call and the timeline beforehand?
Gavin, have you been able to whittle that down at all? As far as I know, he did call his uncle, and from what I understand, the uncle had some, he had some status in the.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little careful on this one.
Okay.
I don't. I'll talk. Gavin, want me to talk, Gavin?
Well, let me just kind of answer
Let
that
me
question
speak.
real quick, Josh. Okay. Josh and Sandy have a terrific investigator, a guy named Tom Brennan. He has more than 800 homicide investigations under his belt.
We had him on the show. He was
He's
our first.
terrific.
Yes.
This is
one of
our
the best.
second show, and the first show we had Tom Brennan, who really told us in great detail what was happening.
Yeah.
So Tom was able to get call logs and those sorts of things, right? So what happened was Sam Goldberg made a call to his cousin, a guy named Kamian Schwartzman, before he called 911. Then he got a call in from Kamian's father, his uncle, a guy named James Schwartzman. James is he's a judge. He's a lawyer. He's a former U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, man with some.
I would qualify the judge a little bit. He's a judge in a special type of court that's only hears ethics cases for lawyers.
Yeah, so he passes judgment on the ethics of lawyers.
Correct.
Which is the most ironic thing.
I was going to say that, but
and if I may, Gavin, may I?
Yeah, please.
One of the really exciting, startling things that happened in this case was that Larry Schwartzman and Kamian were admitted to the apartment. The police had never closed off the crime scene.
James Schwartzman.
The Schwartzmans. Jimmy Schwartzman, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they proceeded to remove Ellen's work computer, Ellen's personal computer, Sam's personal computer, Ellen's car keys, cell phone, honey,
wallet,
okay,
handbag.
Was this was the following evening, from what I understand?
Yes. Well, it was the
No, it was like 12 hours later.
See, we in the Jewish,
while the autopsy was being conducted, they were allowing the apartment to be cleaned, and
the apartment had been sanitized already.
The uncle and the cousin allowed to come into the apartment.
Every time we take another branch of this story, it gets more absurd, because the apartment had been sanitized by a professional sanitizing crew that works for police. Let's go back to what they removed, though, for a second. There was a very interesting thing that they didn't bother to remove. Ellen had received an engagement ring, a Hankin family heirloom. Now, I don't know anything about rings or diamonds, but I do know they have a value. And I'm supposing, and my wife will give you a better idea if she takes out her watch eye, the value of this ring. It was substantial, and it was on the night table in plain view. They didn't remove that. So all they were really removing, in my humble opinion, was evidence.
So that means the chain of custody of Ellen's electronics and Sam's electronics was broken right there and then.
Now, where does that become significant? That becomes significant, as we'll discuss maybe later on. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to talk. That
Talk as
eventually,
long as you'd like.
you'll see then, you could be here a while then.
That's all good.
The chain of custody is broken. The case went from Philadelphia to the Attorney General because the district attorney in Philadelphia had been our attorney to start the case. The district attorney had a internet person or IT person, whatever you want to call it. You'll give me the correct term someday, Gavin. He said he found a search for painless homicide. That's not true. First of all, the FBI had reviewed the computer before. We obtained and said there was nothing. We obtained a copy of the hard drive and sent it for forensic analysis by a professional firm that does that. And the conclusion was this was what they call a ghost
or phantom search.
Phantom search. In other words, if you were to search my name, about 100 things or 1,000 things would come up aside from what you were looking for. My shoe size, where I buy my clothes, what car. So Ellen was really just looking to find if she would gain weight from the medication, because Ellen had a problem, and we'll discuss that, with anxiety, and I had sent her to a psychiatrist because I couldn't handle it and didn't know what her problem was. But let's stay on the train for right now for the computer. So the computer search becomes the central point of the Attorney General's, I'm going to use the word thorough because I can't spell it, but I'd like to put parentheses around it, search. Now, we don't hold much stock in that, you can see. And that's what he and his colleagues based the fact that Ellen committed suicide, that she had searched painless suicide, which is not true.
And also, I don't know anyone in Josh Shapiro's Attorney General office that is certified in psychiatry or psychology. So how are they in a position to make those judgments?
Well, that'll come around later. We see, every time you mention something, we go off on another tangent.
And you just mentioned Josh Shapiro. For those who do not know, he's the current sitting governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And did he know personally Schwartzman? Does he have a connection with Schwartzman?
We believe he did. Okay. And over there in the right
children went to the same parochial
in the
school.
upper corner over there is Gavin Fish with a little wry smile on his face.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Attorney General, okay?
Yeah.
So
super quick, Josh. Let me just get this in so you know. LeSleuth says these parents are amazing. Followed right here by Stephanie Colette. I've been following this family and the tragedy of their beautiful, beautiful daughter for years. This is absolutely homicide. I'm here in support of her and those who love her. And before we leave here, we're going to ask the Greenbergs how we can actually help. What can we do? Paula Coriel writes, no way this is a suicide. Raven writes, clearly this is wrong. Josh, want to continue on with the...
Yeah, 1 second. Okay. Now, Joel, here we go. So now they say the case goes up to the Attorney General. Mr. Brennan, our investigator, and a former Attorney General who's representing us you're laughing already, Gavin. Please don't laugh.
I'm not laughing.
If it wasn't so tragic.
It's not funny.
It's not funny at all, but it's so tragic that it's humorous. That's the problem. So they have a meeting with our two representatives. Before Brennan, and you met Brennan. Brennan's a little crusty. He's a compliment that he's crusty, Sandy. We have different type of people, and it's good that we have those different personalities helping us. So Brennan and Cohen, what was his first? Walter Cohen. Go. Walter Cohen says to Brennan, "You can say anything you want at this meeting." Now I don't know about you.
The meeting was with Jennifer Selber and Michelle Henry of the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office at that time.
Okay. So when was the last time, Joel, an attorney said you could say anything you want when you went to a meeting?
Never.
Never. So they go to the meeting. Camilla, do you like this, Camilla, so far?
I have some criticism. It's still not clear. I like the base, the foundation, the story. We don't know anything other than when this guy came in, the fiance, he found the knife. We don't know that she was stabbed in the back of the head.
Tell you what.
And,
Tell you
Want to
what.
go back to that?
Let me just do this real quick. Then
Yeah,
Josh
yeah.
can get back to what he's
Gavin
saying.
will do it,
Okay?
Carmela. Welcome to my world, everyone.
Good job, Carmela. Listen,
never-
then
it's
Josh,
never-
we're going to get back to the
It's
attorney
never
general.
enough. It's never enough.
No,
Okay,
I think
listen.
we have to.
Okay,
before
okay.
we go into all the
Yes,
I'm going to pass the ball to Gavin.
that's good.
And-
Carmela,
and
I agree with you. Okay, so
Okay,
we talked
thank
about
you.
what Mr. Goldberg said happened, right? The police are called. They come to the scene. Also, people who come to the scene are Kamian Schwartzman, James Schwartzman, Sam's parents. We don't know exactly when they arrive, but they're all there. Okay. Police investigate this, and they decide, they call the ME who does an investigation in there. The ME notices, when you look at the photos that were taken by the ME's investigator, a guy named Olszewski, that he noticed that there were other stab wounds on her abdomen. Like, he lifted her shirt, looked at her abdomen, and he saw very minor, not very deep wounds. And then they took her body to the medical examiner's office. It wasn't until the following morning, when Dr. Osbourne did his autopsy, that he discovered anything that had happened in the back. At the scene, nobody saw any of that. They saw the knife coming out of her chest. They saw a couple of stab wounds on her tummy, and that was it. Once she was Josh, thoroughly examined, right?
That's the word.
They found the other wounds to the back of her head.
plus
So-
the bruises.
Plus the bruises. Yeah.
And am I correct? Were there injuries to the brain as well? And I apologize. I know this is tough to listen to.
No, it's
To the
okay. We
head.
can handle it.
Yeah.
Hey, and let me sideline us here, guys. The Greenbergs are amazing in that from the very moment I first talked to them, they've always said, you can say anything you want, you can ask any question you want, and they are extremely gritty and tough people on this. It's something
The
that I
only
really
thing we don't do
admire.
is we don't look at autopsy pictures.
Right.
Go ahead.
So yes, Joel, the answer to your question was there were two that I remember, wounds that that penetrated into her brain. And yeah,
From the back.
from the back.
From the back.
Upward.
I have so many questions where I don't even know where to begin. But Mary Blues, and we're going to get to it all. Gavin has done so much to help Ellen's parents. Mabel is my dear friend from El Salvador watching. So nice to see Gavin Fish as a guest. I learned about his case via his channel, Best Guest Surviving the Survivor. And I love to say hello to Papa Bear. She is watching from Moscow, Idaho, the home of the horrific quadruple homicides. My heart goes out to these parents. Bless them for continuing their courageously loving journey for justice. So again, let's take a half step back. Prior, I like to understand a person, and obviously I never met Ellen. Tell us, Sandy, about Ellen, 6 months, a year, 2 years before this. What are some of your fondest memories of her, the type of person she was, Sandy?
She was very inspiring. Like, the minute she smiled, the whole room would light up. She would bring her friends from all different parts of her life together. And I never understood that, because I used to always keep mine separate. She just said, Mom, I make them be friends. And I think she just had a great thirst for living. And we had so many plans for the future. And there's a real void in our lives. It's a major loss for us.
After college, Ellen went to school in Washington, D.C. for a program, and it wasn't for her. It was speech pathology, and she wasn't really a biology person. And she was very upset. And she said, Daddy, what should I do? I said, we'll talk about it. What do you want to do? And she said, I'm going to leave the program, start over, do what I think I should do, and move. And I said, that's what you should do. There's no reason that she wasn't, this was not a good program for her, even though she was in it.
Wasn't a good fit.
Wasn't a good fit. And she became a first grade teacher by going to Philadelphia, taking the necessary courses that she needed to fulfill her qualifications to be a teacher. She also became a reading specialist.
She also got 2 master's degrees at night after working full time during the
And
day.
we were in Harrisburg, and she did this we supported her. Don't get me wrong. We supported her the way parents should support their children, but she did it. That's the key. She found her niche. There was a story of how she didn't know Philadelphia, and she goes to I don't know what you want to call it, cattle call for teachers who don't have jobs, and her cell phone goes out. The battery runs down. So she doesn't know Philadelphia, and she has to pick a job. So she picked the Juniata Academy, and it turned out to be a great fit, even though it's what some people might call not in a great neighborhood. And she was doing well.
Interestingly enough, students of hers 12 years later have made comments on our Facebook page, which is called Justice for Ellen.
Right.
And talking about things that they remembered about her. And I had gone to visit when she taught a few times, and I think that's pretty remarkable for her students to have such memories.
Some of her students have commented on my videos.
All right.
I've gotten comments from her students on my videos.
Really?
Yeah.
And by the way, there are a lot of people tuning in tonight who come from Gavin's YouTube channel. So welcome to all of you. Mr. Ranger Lab writes, I am from the Philadelphia area. I remember reading about Ms. Greenberg when it happened. This wasn't right then and still isn't. My heart goes out to the Greenbergs. Justice for Ellen. This is one of the more interesting comments that I really love here from A. Heineman. Social media does not allow cover-ups.
That's where
the big difference from 2011 to now, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. So everyone needs to chip in here and get justice for Ellen. And again, we'll get a little more concrete way of doing that.
go ahead, Joel. Can I make a comment, Joel, please?
Sure.
None of the pushback we're getting, has said that Ellen did commit suicide, and we're going to stick by it. It's all about legal precedent and things like that.
Yeah.
And fear that if this case goes to trial, there are others out there who have our problem. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we have gotten probably farther than about anybody. Gavin knows more about this. And I remember Gavin sort of making me feel depressed that he never felt this will go very far, as he smiles at me again. And I had a former prosecutor the other night give me a thing that I'm wasting my time, that I should see another attorney. And I didn't say anything because he was a guest. But I'd like to have said to him, if it was your son or your daughter, would you have walked away?
Yeah. Josh, how are you and Sandy so calm about this? My lovely mother here is a very excitable person. Let's put it that way. How do you keep your voice of reason? I am now the father of 3. I don't know that I could be as civil as you are right now. I don't know that I wouldn't be tearing down doors. So how are you doing it?
We are on TV with you now. Okay. We have our moments. And I mentioned one when this first started. I said to Sandy, no one's going to care. And she said, Philadelphia will care. We've been on the cover of the national newspaper of France. They have a Figaro.
Daily Mail.
In Britain. We have
Post,
reporters calling us
Philadelphia
for
Inquirer.
Millions. I know it doesn't sound like it, especially the intro we had the other night doesn't sound like it. Millions of people have reviewed this case, not hundreds of thousands, millions. I don't know what the string or the rope or whatever that pulls their interest in, because maybe it's just that they want justice. Maybe it's all about justice, and people feel we're not getting enough justice the way things are now.
There is no justice here.
There is none here.
What is the legal the legal thing that you are attempting right now with your attorney?
Let
That's a
me
terrific question.
Yeah, let me hop in real quick, and then Gavin, I'll have you pick it up along with Josh. But according to what I read in 2019, Ellen Greenberg's family, the ones you're looking at right now, asked for the Philadelphia DA, the district attorney's office, to review the case. However, District Attorney Larry Krasner sent the case to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office because he had previously represented the Greenbergs. The Attorney General's office agreed with the suicide determination, but in July 2022.
Let's actually pause there for just 1 second.
Sure. Pick it up from there.
The people who investigated the case at the district attorney's office had been given, they'd taken jobs in the attorney general's office. So the very people who investigated it the first time, the very people who investigated it at the attorney general's office, who said, we agree with what the district attorney's office did, they were the ones in the district attorney's office who did it. So they were saying, we agree with ourselves.
Right.
That gets lost every time.
And what is going on now?
Yeah. So where are we today with the investigation and the case?
Well,
The Attorney General's office at the time, Josh Shapiro was the Attorney General, finally decided he had a conflict of interest, or what looked like a conflict of interest, and sent it back to the Philadelphia District Attorney's office, who then referred it to Chester County, and the case is supposedly being looked at, but we haven't heard a peep from them.
well, that's not quite true. I'm going to go back a little bit. Under pressure and conversation and questioning and persistence by the young man, Gavin Fish, the Attorney General.
Josh is the only person who ever calls me a young man, by the way.
Okay, well, I'm
Everything
older than
is
you.
relative.
You see, Gavin pushed, and Josh Shapiro didn't want to hear from me anymore, or from the reporters I would talk to who would follow him around, and he ran away. So Josh Shapiro decided that even though there was no conflict of interest, he didn't want impropriety to show in his investigation. So he threw the case back to Philadelphia, at which Krasner had to throw it out to a neighboring county, and he chose Chester County. Did I answer the question?
The conflict of interest, it came from a viewer of mine who said, hey, Josh Shapiro's old friends with the Schwartzmans. You could find out. It's really easy to find out. And they gave me a clue. And I went to eBay and I bought his high school yearbook.
Wow.
And Josh Shapiro and the Schwartzmans are old pals.
By the way, Jake Tapper, I don't know if he's in that yearbook, but I just saw him interviewing Josh Shapiro, and Jake Tapper was a classmate. So maybe we can.
Yeah, they're buddies. I think Tapper was like a year ahead of Josh, so he wasn't in this, but his brother was. So
Gavin, that was brilliant.
Yeah. So
I congratulate
Gavin, that was brilliant. Well, it
also generated time out, Joel.
Yep.
It generated a letter to Mr. Fish that he didn't want, that proceeded to cost him a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
Gavin, are you able to tell us, like, generally speaking, what happened? Because it sounds like there's.
Oh yeah, I've been completely transparent about it. I put it on my YouTube channel. An attorney representing James Schwartzman, Kamian Schwartzman, Richard Goldberg, sent me a letter demanding that I retract everything that I said in regards to connections between the Schwartzman, Goldbergs, Hankins with Josh Shapiro. And of course, I'm not willing to retract that because everything that I said was true. So had to hire an attorney to defend myself on that.
And where does that stand?
Crickets. Ever since my attorney responded to them and declined, all of their demands, it's been crickets. Well, I think it's smart for them not to say anything more, because if they ever wanted to push this any further, then I would be able to, depose them.
By the way, if there are any good attorneys out in STS Nation that want to help, and I know quite a few myself just from doing this show, we might be able to help Gavin out here if he needs it moving forward, or if we need it moving forward. Now Carmela's going to get very nervous here.
Yeah, I'll get paranoid right now.
Yeah.
Joel,
No, but this is just a modern day intimidation tactic, Gavin, right? Do me a favor, I'm slow on the uptake here. So explain one more time what this letter from the lawyer, who the lawyer was, and what they were telling you to stop doing. Just one more time so I understand it clearly.
It was really funny because I was I was out doing something. I can't remember what I was doing. I was working or I was out with my wife or something like that. And I actually got a text from a reporter at ABC News saying, "Hey, I've seen the Johnson letter. You probably want to talk to somebody about it." I'm like, "What Johnson letter? What are you talking about, Johnson letter?" This guy copied ABC News, ABC 6 Philadelphia, and the Office of the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, in his demand letter to me. So I think I was the last one to read it. It had arrived at my house by certified mail. One of my kids had signed for it, something like that.
There are two interesting things in this letter. Number one, you left out one name, Gavin, and that was Sam Goldberg was also involved in that letter.
No.
And I'd like to get to him. He is the fiance,
sort of.
by the
The
way.
other thing was, this is the first time they have ever responded with anything besides no comment.
You can go to my website and read the letter. It's gavinfish.com. You can go read the letter.
And I mean, Gavin, it's obvious, but I'm going to ask a question. They were just trying to silence you. You've got a First Amendment right to say nothing was libelous, correct?
Right.
And they were just then basically trying to silence you. This does happen in modern America. Ronnie,
and the Schwartzman, Goldberg, Hankin crew, to my understanding, is a very well-to-do, very wealthy, very politically connected family. And I know Josh and Sandy are going to stay away from it because they should. But from my understanding, they're politically connected. They are wealthy, and they can push little guys like me around, usually. But that seems to be like I got under their skin on something, and they decided to try to intimidate me out of covering the story.
Ronnie writes, so you're saying a man, because people do have questions, and Sandy or Josh, feel free to take this. So you're saying a man who is close to law enforcement was in her life. Sandy, is that accurate? Would you characterize it as such?
I don't know anything about that.
No.
No.
Mr. Goldberg is not connected to law enforcement.
Okay. So
he's connected to wealth and power.
Wealth and power. Those are two important things, especially in the United States of America, especially if you're involved potentially in a crime. Let's get to Gavin, are you comfortable talking about Sam Goldberg? And
I am.
Okay. And Josh, are you comfortable talking about Sam Goldberg? What was one of your first impressions of him? He was Ellen Greenberg's fiance. Well before this, when you first met him, because you had to have, what did you think?
My perspective, let's go. You have to go back to my perspective was a father who wanted his daughter to be happy, a father who was looking possibly for a certain type of young man. Did he fit all those parameters? No. There's certain things that bothered me, which you may consider very superficial, but I consider personally very significant. He didn't have a car. Now, why do you say, Josh, why do you care if he has a car? Well, a car is freedom. And Sam was living, when he wasn't on the road, working as a gopher on NBC's golf telecast. He lived at home. I lived at home for a while, but before I went to college, and I sometimes would just take my car and go for a ride to let off so I could stay at home and get along with my parents. So I think the car is a significant thing. As soon as Ellen could get a driver's license, she wanted a car so she could, have some freedom. The car is freedom. So although I do commend him for living at home and saving money, I don't for the car. Also, he was a little more.
But
more
that's not what
boisterous.
he was doing, Josh. He wasn't staying at home to save money.
Right.
Like you could probably think that at the time.
Well,
right?
it was showing the difference in my economics, I guess.
No, but Josh, I mean, I'm talking
No, but-
strictly from a
I wanted my daughter to be happy, Joel. My
Yeah.
daughter seemed happy. I play golf. If you hit a ball to the right of the sand trap, you say, it's not what I want. It's a son-in-law. It's not what I wanted, but I could probably work with it. That's how I looked at Sam.
Can you elaborate? Was it, I mean, there was something like irritating about the personality? Did he just
No,
rub
no,
you
he
the
was a
wrong
very
way?
charming young man. Everything seemed great. I'm going to go back to the same thing, Joel.
Uh-huh.
My daughter was happy.
Okay.
I was happy if she was happy. It's her decision. I would counsel her if I saw a major thing, but we didn't see anything major. Go ahead.
I have a question.
It's not always so obvious. Come on.
A month before this horrible tragedy, a month before all of you went on a vacation together.
Yes.
Did you notice anything suspicious about him?
No.
I did notice I did notice things about my daughter. My daughter's personality had changed. I am not a qualified psychologist, psychiatrist, or social worker or whatever. I was a periodontist. Teeth and gums and implants were my thing, and I was very good at that. But I knew something was different about my daughter. I couldn't put my finger on it. And my daughter, even though she was engaged and sending out save the date notices, wanted to leave her job in Philadelphia and move home to Harrisburg. So I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what. I made a deal with Ellen. If Ellen went to somebody I thought could help her, a psychiatrist, and she and the psychiatrist worked it out, she could come home. I was interested in my daughter's health and well-being, and her job. I had no inkling that her life was in danger or she was living with somebody who, whatever.
Did it come out afterwards? I understand that friends told you or spoke publicly that she started to act a little differently, saying, her friends would invite her to the movies and she'd say, well, I need to make sure that Sam is okay with it. Sort of like she was under his thumb.
Yes.
When were you made aware of the fact that he appeared to be controlling?
Years after.
There are certain things that have come out that if, would have, should have, and could have, and hindsight's 2020. If those things had come out, we may not have been sitting here right now. One of which is a close friend said that Ellen approached her about moving out of her apartment. And when asked if she wanted to move with her fiance, Ellen said, just didn't say no. She said nothing. So something was wrong. We didn't know what. We had, I'll say it. We were babes in the woods. This is all, I never had any things like this go on. I had a mother, I had a father, I had a brother who's a physician. I had myself, and I was a periodontist. I married Sandy. We've lived happily most of the time, all the time for 42 years. I'm a comedian. I'm sorry. But I had no experience. This is all, it's like I'm getting a law degree over the last 12 years. Everything I spouted to you is what I've learned because of this incident over 12 years of being involved in the case and getting up at 4:00 in the morning to think of what I'm going to say to you guys today.
Josh, was your Jewish mother upset you became a periodontist and not an attorney?
She was upset that the guidance counselor sent me a thing to go. No, she was upset that the guidance counselor sent me an invitation to go to the Air Force Academy. That she didn't want. My dad was a dentist also.
Josh, I've been living with the label of black sheep my whole life. My sister graduated medical school and college in 6 years.
Oh, my God.
I have a shirt. I should have worn it tonight. It says black sheep. Jenny writes, my first live stream on STS Nation. This is my first time hearing about this case, so I'm glad there is coverage on it here. Justice for Ellen, followed here by Leslie McGuire. I do not believe she took her own life. J. Thomas Reset is a friend of the show and a very bright guy. And he writes, that many wounds, usually there's injury to the perp. That day, did the police photograph or, take pictures, examine, speak, interrogate, interview Sam Goldberg? Any of the above, Josh or Gavin or Sandy, whoever wants to take it.
I think there was, yes, I believe he left the apartment building with the police. What else you
But
want me
what took place, I
We-
couldn't
let-
tell
let-
you.
let
Well,
me-
you weren't around. We have to stress that you were in Harrisburg.
And it was snowing
And
and they
this
couldn't
was
get there.
happening in Philadelphia. There was a huge snowstorm.
Yeah.
You weren't around. You did.
We
You
had
were
no,
kept in the dark.
Camilla, we had no contact with any Philadelphia officials.
And the police were really not forthright
I don't even
with the information.
I don't even know how we found out our daughter was deceased, if you want to know the truth. I found out that it was called a homicide on the day of the funeral by friends.
Yeah.
Nobody called me. Nobody.
To answer your question about what happened with Sam, we would know all of that if we had access to the investigative records, but they withhold all of that. All that we know is what witnesses have said to the Greenberg's investigator, Mr. Brennan, and a couple of others, that Sam was taken. Actually, and in the letter that Mr. Johnson sent me, he even said that Sam was taken to the police station and interviewed. So that's all we know.
Josh,
Possibly in handcuffs, by the way.
what's that?
Possibly in handcuffs.
Possibly in handcuffs.
Some witnesses have said he was in handcuffs.
And by the way, that apartment was completely cleaned. You can't make this stuff up, by a company called Crime Scene Cleaning Services, I believe, which
Crime
is
Scene
just
Cleanup.
crime scene cleanup. You cannot. Truth is stranger than fiction. I want to get through comments because STS Nation is very helpful here. The Snooper writes, dear God, heartbreaking. I can't even imagine your beautiful parents with a beautiful daughter whom don't deserve this. She didn't deserve to lose her life in the way. We will help. To this comment here.
Social media.
Yeah.
You're our friends.
Yes, Jeannie Castellano. To the Greenbergs, we're all hoping and praying for your justice. We all know the truth, and the truth finally will come out. And praying for justice for your beautiful daughter, Ellen. This is an interesting person, and this is someone that Steve Cohen, my secret sauce, can help with. Ken Maines of Unsolved No More. He is kind of the preeminent cold case investigator in this country. So maybe we can get him connected on this show to try to help Josh and Sandy. But a couple of things I just want to go back over here. She was in therapy. You said that you didn't know what to do. You sent her to therapy. The therapist wrote, as far as I know, there was no suicidal ideation on her part. Do you have any? Sandy and Josh, do you believe there's any chance your daughter committed suicide? Josh?
None.
Not one.
The psychiatrist notes her diagnosis was anxiety. And since we have an expert among us tonight, she'll tell you that anxiety does not cause suicide.
No, but if I can use my expertise, I think that your daughter mentioned to you that she had stress at school, and if I understand it correctly, when it was checked out, she was loved there and appreciated, and everything was positive. I think your daughter maybe had a hard time accepting that it's her relationship that is the problem, and she transferred that on her work. And Gavin is shaking his head, agreeing. Not doing this, he's doing this.
Gavin, weigh in.
Well, Carmela,
the way I
agree.
understand it, the victim of the abuse, thinks that she or he is wrong, and the abuser is the rock. When I hear that word rock, all of Ellen's teaching records, her teaching, whatever teachers do, they put together lesson plans, whatever, were in perfect order when they were taken over by her replacement. So she was defraying the true cause, possibly, I have to watch what I say, of her anxiety by saying it was school. I agree. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, Carmela, I think you hit the nail right on the head, and Josh is right. Everything, all of her lesson plans, all of the grades, everything was ship shape for the next person to do it. But when you look at Ellen's life, she did tell other people that she was having problems at work. So I feel like she was convinced that that was the problem. Like she had this real problem in her life, and she was transferring it onto work.
And also, I think being the beloved daughter, the only daughter, the pride and joy of her parents, she, in a way, tried to protect them and think that she can work this out.
Carm, I always protect you. I never drop any
You are the
angst on
ideal
I never
son.
drop angst on you. Papa Bear writes here, could you file, and Gavin, I'm assuming you've done this, but could you file for a Freedom of Information Act, otherwise known as a FOIA, and get the file? What happens when you try to do that?
Yeah, everybody and their dog has tried to do that. In the Commonwealth, it's called a right to know law request, and RTKL. And each time I've tried to get it, I get the same response. We're withholding it because it's exempt. Mr. Brennan has had that. I'm sure that Mr. Krasner probably had the same result in the very beginning when he tried to get that. So, yeah.
Josh and Sandy, were they foolish enough to try to silence you? Have you received letters from attorneys saying don't speak about your daughter? Has that come close to happening? No.
Is your present attorney Pedraza or
Joe Pedraza?
Joe Pedraza. He's your present attorney.
And
yes,
we've been in touch with him. So literally,
that you asked before, what is it that they're trying to do? And Josh talked about that. I actually, from the very beginning, thought this is an uphill battle. What the Greenbergs are trying to do with Mr. Pedraza is have the court force action at the ME's office. They're seeking a remedy called mandamus. It's a legal remedy where you're claiming, or the Greenbergs are claiming, or the estate of Ellen Greenberg is claiming that the actions that were done at the ME's office are capricious. And there's another legal term for it, but basically it's not done in good faith. The conclusion that they came to is through their own capriciousness. And so they're asking the court to say, because they are not taking this seriously, we want the court to order the medical examiner's office to do what they should do, call it either a homicide or undecided. Mandamus is an extremely difficult thing to get. It's extremely difficult to get. And to my knowledge, Josh and Sandy are further along than any other case I've ever seen on this. And man, I think I was in London when Judge Hill's letter came out. I think I landed in London, turned on my phone, and the Greenbergs had sent me or actually Mr. Pedraza had sent me Judge Glennis Hill's unsolicited, what do you call that? A brief to the appellate court saying, this is why I've ruled that the case can move forward. And what has happened is the city of Philadelphia has appealed. It's in the appellate court, and the city is basically saying they don't have standing here. So there's no remedy. You should just dismiss this. But I think that the Greenbergs have a very good case to make. The trial judge is on their side when it comes to that aspect of the case. It's just, what was it, November that Joe argued in the appellate court?
Something like 15th, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's now March. I would imagine that we'll be getting that ruling in the next little while.
The city tried to appeal to the lower court, to Judge Hill, I believe, or I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
It was turned down twice. So they went to an upper level and they accepted the appeal. Judge Hill wrote a 16-page legal opinion, and meaning he didn't do it last night and hand it to you guys. It was footnoted. It was everything supporting our case.
And the appellate court didn't ask for it.
And they didn't ask for it. And he gave it to the court. Now, we are waiting for the ruling on this appeal. But I'm going to tell you right away, if we win the appeal, they're going to take it to the Philadelphia Supreme Court. And if we win the appeal, we're going to take it to the Philadelphia Supreme Court. So it's just they're waiting for me to die and run out of money.
Well, you're not
That's what
going
this is all
anywhere.
about.
You're not going anywhere anytime soon. This comment here is not just anyone. This is Palmetto Prime Time, otherwise known as the great Sarah Ford. We've become friends with her from doing the Alec Murdaugh case. She is the legal director, a former prosecutor in South Carolina for the South Carolina Victim Assistance Network, otherwise known as SCVAN or SCVAN. She'll make fun of me for that. But again, she's a legal director. If she gives me permission, Josh and Sandy, I'll put you in touch with her.
We appreciate that.
She is a fierce attorney. You guys should check out her YouTube channel, Palmetto Prime Time. And she writes here, have you pursued a release?
Write this down.
Have you pursued a release under victims' rights laws? Gavin, have you done that?
A release of the file? Is that what she's
I'm
saying?
assuming that's what she means, and I'll connect you with Sarah. And there's another name that comes to mind. No one messes with Wendy Murphy. I don't know if you've heard of Wendy Murphy. She teaches law at New England College of Law in Boston. She was a legal contributor, a very, 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 very sharp mind, focuses on domestic violence, and at one point was a major legal commentator for all the networks at one point or another. And I'm going to connect you with her as well.
Thank you.
But Sarah Ford and Wendy Murphy, they take no prisoners. They are, and I mean this in a great way, they are pit bulls. And I'm going to introduce you to them.
Thank you.
Frankie Figs writes, and always have to ask the tough questions. He's a friend of the show. The one thing that gives me pause with the wounds are the hesitation wounds. Someone committing homicide doesn't hesitate. Were there hesitation wounds? I did not hear.
Well, it's funny.
I would characterize them as hesitation wounds. The Attorney General's office, the District Attorney's office has characterized them as hesitation wounds. But
didn't they characterize as testing wounds or something like that? Actually,
yeah. So what happened was Ellen was stabbed 20 times violently, viciously, and quickly. And I think that what many people would, what the authorities have said, those are hesitation wounds. They're not hesitation wounds. They are misses or near misses.
By the way, Gavin.
And I think there were 2 knives used.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
A serrated knife and a straight edge knife. So Ellen must have picked up one knife and said, well, I like this one better. I'll continue with the other knife.
And taken it away because it was never found.
Statistically, women, by a wide margin, will not commit suicide by inflicting that kind of pain on themselves.
Did you speak to Gavin, to Cyril Wecht?
We are in touch with Cyril Wecht's office. That was my next question to you. So both Cyril Wecht and Dr. Henry Lee, who I've had on this show, not about this case, but prior to that, arguably the 2 most famous forensic, pathologists in the nation. They both reviewed it. What did they find, Josh?
The bottom line, you remember, I'm a babe in the woods when this starts, and I'm a periodontist and a dentist and a practitioner, so I want definitive answers. His conclusion was suspicious of homicide.
Strongly suspicious of homicide was Cyril Wecht, and Henry Lee
also agreed with that.
Characterized it as
a homicide with the scene being changed.
And there were fingernail marks by the throat. A piece of the spinal cord was also found years later.
No, that was there right away. That's the main contention of the wounds right now.
Okay, explain that, please. Gavin, you want to explain that?
Yeah. So there weren't fingernail marks on the neck. There were round oval bruises on her neck. And when you look at the autopsy photos, which again, the Greenberg have been gracious enough to share, there are hemorrhages underneath. So if I can get, I know that Josh and Sandy are okay with me doing this, but if I can get a little gross anatomy on this, what they do when they perform an autopsy specifically on the neck, they're looking for evidence of strangulation or throttling or something like that. And our neck is built up with several layers of muscular straps that just kind of, hold the head up. So they open that up and they deflect out different muscles, and they start to look at the different layers of muscles in the neck. In those photos, there is a hemorrhage in her neck. and there is an obvious red, bloody hemorrhage in her neck, in the front, which is an indication of a throttling or something like that. Her hyoid bone wasn't broken. Her, the cartilages in her neck weren't cracked or anything like that, but there was that hemorrhage. What was the spinal column?
Gash on the top of her head, wasn't there?
Yeah,
There was a big gash on the top of her head.
Yeah, I asked about this piece of a spinal cord that I thought was found years later, but no.
So this is an interesting one, and we see these in cases like Ellen's a lot, where a medical examiner's office will only withhold tissues if there is evidentiary value there, right? And you can look at lots of different cases, but one of the ones that I can think of is Amanda Winkowski in Buffalo, New York, where when they went to do the second autopsy on her, there were things missing. It's because the pathologist's office held back pieces of tissues because there was evidentiary value. In the medical examiner's office in Philadelphia, they held back a piece of her spinal column that had evidentiary value. And later on, they had a neuropathologist working at the ME's office who
Allegedly.
The chief ME allegedly asked her to take a look at the sample, and in her testimony to Mr. Pedraza, she said, there's no vital reaction.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gavin. Let's go back to Dr. Rourke.
Oh, yeah. So
there is a very eminent forensic pathologist in Philadelphia by the name of Dr. Rourke. What's her first name?
Lucy Rourke Adams.
Right. She allegedly was brought in to look at the spinal tissue, and she said that Ellen's spine was not damaged.
That's a fraudulent paragraph that was inserted with different fonts on Ellen's death certificate.
Right. Dr. Rourke was approached by us, by Mr. Brennan, and her response, well, first of all, Dr. Rourke has a reputation, because we actually met with the medical examiner about this. Dr. Rourke has a reputation that she writes a report, she sends a bill, and she gets paid. And she's entitled to that. I'm not criticizing that at all, but that's her MO. And if you ask her what time it is, it'll be listed on the bill. Okay? Dr. Rourke, I'm raising my voice. Dr. Rourke never submitted a report, never submitted a bill, and never got paid. When Mr. Brennan approached her about this to, comment, maybe sign an affidavit about what she saw, she hung up on him. I don't remember the case, and she hung up. In the future, they hired another forensic pathologist by the name of
Lindsay Emery.
I can't remember all the names. In 2021, in a deposition for the trial, Lindsay Emery said that this wound was post-mortem, meaning it had been administered after Ellen was dead. Okay.
The medical description that she gave was, I can't comment on it because there's no vital reaction. No vital reaction means no pulse.
Right.
No pulse means she was dead.
But what makes this even more comical, I'm using that word in a very sarcastic way, she was doing this deposition in 2021. Dr. Emery, when did you look at the tissue? August 2019. Why is there no report in the file, Dr.
Emery?
I was told not to write one.
And do we know who asked her not to write one?
I'm not going to say.
Okay.
She testified to that.
The answer is yes, we know who it was.
Right.
We do. Okay.
No, what it makes me think about, and there are no real comparisons except some.
You know what I'd
Very
love to
few.
see? I'd love to see Carmela with a microphone in her hand going after Josh Shapiro, a nice Jewish boy, governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
No,
He can't he cannot walk away from Carmela.
You can't walk fast enough, huh?
Let me tell you something.
No,
I worked for Michael Moore. The king of the ambush interview was Michael Moore, not a guy that I love, by the way. But we got to send Carmela to Harrisburg
good.
and have her
Not
try
Harrisburg.
to track
No,
down
but I have a very
Josh Shapiro. And
consoling.
Josh Shapiro, you have an open
I have
invite
a
on my
very-
show.
I have a very consoling thought. If this guy would let me tell you,
I agree.
Sorry.
we somehow got very deeply into the
Dan Markel.
Dan Markel case. If you
Yeah.
are interested, you can read up on it.
Okay.
But the moral in that case, it happened right here in Tallahassee, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened in 2014.
Right.
Some people knew some people, and it never went to trial as long as certain people were in government.
Hmm.
And then when there was a new guard, now not only the people they hired to commit the murder,
The hitmen were
but the
convicted.
actual nice Jewish boy, who, by the way, is a dentist,
Oh,
is also waiting for
His
trial.
name is Charlie Adelson. He is
Charlie
the
Adelson.
ex-brother-in-law of the victim. He's about to stand trial.
It's a horrendous, complicated story.
So they got
The
justice
point
after
is that
the
for
government
years
changed.
and
Yes.
years and years,
Yeah. There was a
nothing-
connection.
There was
there was a
everything was
connection-
done not to prosecute these
Yeah.
people.
There's a connection to the president of the Florida State Senate.
Allegedly, we should always say allegedly.
yes.
But,
Sharon Lynch writes.
But the reality was that nothing was done. And the people who committed this were waltzing around Miami and South Beach. And then when the new people came into power, now they're really starting to move on it very, very slowly. The poor mother of this young man is also very what would you say?
Carmen Saris, I want you to try to track
No,
down
but don't be
Governor
serious.
Shapiro.
But what's she's
Hey, I
very
tried to-
proactive.
She
She's
thinks
very
she
proactive.
thinks she's retired.
The
She's not
mother of
retired.
this murdered young man is very proactive and very intelligent, and doing a lot of good work and getting a lot of support from the media.
Sharon
Listen,
Lynch.
so I work as a local reporter out here in Western Pennsylvania, and
Mhm.
during the campaign, Shapiro came through, Mastriano came through. They would not talk to me, neither of them.
Well,
No, like Josh Shapiro, I could throw a rock at the place where he had his little rally from my home. I think I could reach it from there.
Hmm.
It was right close to my home, and I was not allowed in.
Well-
They kept you from the venue. Is that what you're
Yep.
saying? Were you on
Yep.
like a blacklist? Because I know people.
I am 100% sure you are on a blacklist.
I went in with my little media pass and was not allowed in.
Wow. Sharon
That,
Lynch.
that was
writes-
about 2 weeks after I broke the news about the
Wow.
connection.
Wow. Sharon Lynch writes, what about autopsy reports that check nail clippings and check for struggles? I'm assuming Cyril Weck looked at all that, as well as Dr. Henry Lee. This was clearly not a suicide. This feels like it was an up close and personal crime. God bless her parents. My question, Carm, let me get a question in once in a
Why?
while. Carm.
Why?
This is my show, Carm.
Okay.
I'm going to get the hate mail now. I'm being mean to my mom. I get it
They
every
are
week.
they're so lovely to me. Every time I open
I'm
my
going to get
big
a lot
mouth,
today.
they blame him.
It's been a long week. I did a 3-hour show. Not that I'm complaining, but I will on Alec Murdoch, and then about 3 more. So it's been a long week. My question to you: when is the last time, Sandy, that you spoke to Sam Goldberg?
Mm.
Well, I received an email from him telling us that he was engaged.
Oh my
And
God.
that was the last communication between the two of us. I mean, during the first year or two, he would call me and we'd have our chit chat. And I would say towards the end of the conversation, and you know, Sam, we know this was not a suicide. And there would just be an awkward silence.
Can you? I mean, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable spot, but I mean, was Did you find his personality controlling? Did you find him like
No,
tense,
I,
uptight? No?
I thought he was charming, and Ellen was happy, and
That's what we cared about.
yeah,
You can't, as Carmela has found out, you can't direct your children all their lives. And she was happy, and we wanted her to be happy. And we wanted her we wanted her to have what we thought was a good thing, was a family and all those other things that go with it, and not be alone.
Gavin, Shar writes, you sounded hesitant to perform CPR as well with 911 on the phone. When we had Tom Brennan on, who's a private investigator who was hired, I believe, or I think he's doing it pro bono for
Yes,
the
I
Greenberg
pay his
family.
expenses.
But I'm just wondering, he mentioned that he did some testing with that door lock, and I saw a comment that I think your wife, Gavin, maybe did some.
I did the door lock here at
You
the
did the
hospital.
door lock, and your wife tried to, I guess, theoretically tried to see what it would be like to stab herself.
We
Can you
did
tell
it,
us
yeah.
about those homemade tests that you ran?
Yeah, with what we did is we know the kind of knife that was found inside Ellen, and so we measured that out, and then we tried to somehow stab herself. My wife is the same weight, same height, same build. She's athletic, just the way Ellen was. The only difference really is that we are much older than Ellen was, but my wife is a very good avatar, very flexible, very strong. And you wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I married a woman who's very fit. And we tried to just, recreate some of the stab wounds, the direction that they came, the depth that they came, how much strength it would take to do it. And the reality was there wasn't a single wound on the back of her head that she felt like she could actually do.
Palmetto Pine Pride. I'm sorry, let me hop in here. This is Sarah Ford again, who's a domestic violence expert. If you haven't pursued with a victims' rights lawyer, please consider doing so. I'd be happy to connect them with one in the area. So many developments in victims' rights law recently, Sarah. So that is something that should definitely be pursued moving forward. I did not mean to. So Sandy, it was. You spoke to Sam Goldberg for a couple of years. I understand he's remarried with some children.
correct,
Has it been years since you've talked to him?
correct. Correct. It's been years since we've spoken.
Now, it's important to say one more thing about Sam Goldberg, is the fact that this apartment is on the 6th floor, that it was snowing outside, and there was like some kind of a ledge or a little terrace there to the outside from the apartment into the street, I guess, or into the back of the...
It's like a faux terrace. It's like
terrace,
foot wide.
and there was fresh snow on it, so everybody knew that nobody came in from the outside,
right,
from the other direction. So there were no cameras in the corridor
on the 6th
and
floor.
the
That's correct.
apartment was locked from the inside. And Tom Brennan told us when we spoke with him that he went to a locksmith school for the FBI or for some
Right.
And he says in 1 minute he could open it from the outside.
Well, you can close it from the outside. In other words, if you put a string around the ball on the swing lock, hold up the swing lock, would you, Gavin? If you put a ball around that, close it and pull it. You pull the thing closed from the outside.
That part of it, though, doesn't even matter to me because, and I know a lot of people spend a lot of time on the swing lock. My only interest in the swing lock is whether or not Sam is telling the truth about what happened.
Well,
that's it, right?
Yeah,
it can be locked from the outside. It can be opened
photograph
from the outside. All that stuff is true,
right?
But it's not relevant because if he says that he broke it open, the evidence shows that that's not the case.
Right. The medical examiner's photographer took a picture of the swing lock and it shows it's hardly damaged or dislodged. In fact, one TV station refused to show a picture because they were afraid of a lawsuit.
Pippi Longstocking, one of my favorite shows as a kid. No way I can smell a snake. What a crock. Who would ever think this was self-inflicted? Following up here by Artemis, this case literally reeks of injustice, followed by Papa Bear from Moscow, Idaho. How about a GoFundMe account to get this on a full-page spread in a newspaper? There's been media, not enough media, and people really need to, no pun intended, with a door latch onto this and get people really involved here.
There is a GoFundMe account, by the way.
Gavin, please tell everyone about it right now.
It's raised $42,152. By the way, I personally believe what Josh said is true, that I think the city of Philadelphia is trying to outlive the Greenbergs and outspend the Greenbergs, trying to bankrupt them and outlive them. Right?
Well, the problem is, Philadelphia should be around longer than the Greenbergs. You don't know in the world we live in today. But Gavin, to you, you'll send me the link and I'll put it on the summary under this YouTube. But can you tell the people watching where to go for this GoFundMe?
Just GoFundMe.com/Justice for Ellen. Just search Justice for Ellen on GoFundMe. Or if you go to gavinfish.com, go to Ellen's page, there's a link there.
And there's also Justice for Ellen on Facebook. Anna writes, we have viewers all over. STS Nation spans the globe. Good morning from Poland. I follow Ellen's story since I discovered Gavin's channel about 2 years ago. I'd like to tell Ellen's story to Polish viewers. If you allow me, my heart bleeds to you. The more people that know, the better. Following here, these parents are beautiful, and their daughter was too. Justice for Ellen. I would love to help these parents if I could. This is really heartbreaking. I have faith justice will prevail for Ellen. At the end, justice always comes out, I think.
Melissa, you can help. There are several ways that you can help. Share the story, share the Facebook page, sign the petition, the change.org petition, and donate a couple bucks to the Justice for Ellen GoFundMe page.
I'm going to have Gavin email me all these vital links, and I'm going to put them in the summary page for this episode. I would like to get Wendy Murphy on this, as well as Sarah Ford. They are as tenacious as they come, tough, and they know the law, which is what you need in a case like this. Marie Hernandez. This could take an hour, but I'm going to read this comment. Behave, Joel. I want to hear your mom's opinion.
I got one of those. This is.
Look at her eyes light up. Yeah, the comments they lag behind. They're a lagging economic indicator. Carmela, let me turn to you, my beautiful mother.
No,
it's tough for me on Sunday nights, everybody, because you know how moms are. Carm, what is your?
Now I only do it Sunday nights. My husband is in a very critical condition for 7 months.
Oh, this is something I was going to ask. Sorry to cut you off.
So I get a lot of sympathy because
whatever happened to Dr. Marlon Osbourne, the medical examiner that ruled this either like undetermined or a homicide and switched it to suicide? Where is Dr. Marlon Osbourne today?
Two things. I'll tell you where he is, but first I'm going to tell you during his deposition, he said if he knew what he knew now, he would call it undecided or homicide, which he has not changed. That was
he has the power to change that. He could do that at any time.
He could do that tomorrow.
Yeah, and he did take an oath to practice his profession.
Okay, so he could do that. So that was that's under video and audio. He's probably your neighbor.
He lives in Florida.
He's in Florida, South Florida, working as a
medical examiner in Broward.
In fact, I saw him on a case recently. It was a very famous case in Florida that he was the medical examiner for.
I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
Everybody in the medical examiner's office who's involved in this case has left Pennsylvania.
Unbelievable. Prosser Gang writes, why did the medical examiner change the results from homicide to suicide only after police told them to? I mean, do we?
Yes. There was a meeting. Galino, the head of the ME's office, Osbourne.
The Parkland shooting. The Parkland shooting.
Wow.
Marlon Osbourne was the medical examiner on that.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Okay.
17
there was a meeting.
People. Wow.
After months, I think, or a short while, between the police, assistant district attorney, some other people, and we're going to call them Jane and John Doe because we don't have the records from the police of who was there. At this meeting, the police pushed Osbourne to call it a suicide. There is no written record of that meeting anywhere. Number one. Number two, Sandy and I asked Galino and so did I think our attorney, have you ever had a meeting like that before? No. Have you ever had a meeting like that since then? No. So this is a one-time meeting with no record, no public records.
No any records.
I'm sorry, Gavin?
No any records.
No any records. I'm
Period.
sorry, Gavin.
Yeah.
Obsessed for Disneyland, right? Joel, you keep cutting your mother off. Here we go.
I noticed that.
On to Foodies, Austin.
Not about me.
Dude, quit interrupting your mother. I just did it.
Don't
I want
do
to
that.
continue listening to this, but you are unbearable. Thank you.
I think he might be doing that on purpose, everyone.
This
Maybe
is
she doing that?
this is an ongoing little game that Joe likes to play with me.
Kevin Bushy
I am
writes,
the monster
you're lucky to
mother.
have your mother. Cherish her. I cherish her. Trust me. And then this is the best idea so far right here, everyone. Mary Goff. Carm needs a solo Sunday show. I'll set it up. I'll put you right in front. You run the show, Carm.
I'd watch that.
One night and see what happens.
I am going to, I'm 83 and a half now. I know exactly that I'm half already. So I took my early retirement after doing this with him for 2 years. And he, in a charitable move, he gave me Sunday nights. And now I know why he did it. So he could tease me on Sunday nights. Anyway, I am an optimist by nature, believe it or not, after everything that has happened and so forth in my life and in our family's life. I really think you will get the justice for maybe not this round with this, this legal move that you're making, but you will have to travel with it further up the chain of legal institutions until you get you will get justice. This is so absurd and so obvious. I mean, the murder is so obvious that you don't have to be an expert to realize it.
Let me ask this question
if it's covered, it will be uncovered.
Let me ask this as shrewdly as I can. Tiff Knox, by the way, writes, Dr. Marlon Osbourne is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. By the way, Melissa, if you're looking for moderators, I always am. It's survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. And I would really appreciate it. Dog Defender writes, I do not understand how anyone could disrespect Carm. There's no one who loves my mother more than me. She is my mother. We have an unusual relationship. And then here, Noreen Gardner writes, Mom power. Yeah, there's a reason she's a host on my show. How do I ask this without,
just ask it straight.
Do you have any suspicion that the killer could be out there and is someone you don't know? Let me ask it that way. None. You believe you know who the killer is?
I believe I know the motive. I believe, yes, this was a crime of incident or passion, but I know what the motive was. The motive was the abuse. And Sandy and I finding out about the abuse. That's what I believe.
That's the closest I've ever heard the Greenbergs to.
Sorry?
That's the closest I've ever heard you come to
saying it.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask it in a way that it didn't, that they
could be a character witness for me when I go get my wife.
You might get a letter next, Josh.
I don't care. I'd love a letter. I'd love to go to trial.
Yeah. Carm, let me ask you this, since everyone's yelling at me. By the way, Marina's of LOL, Carmen, Joe, I do deserve it. Don't worry. It's been a long week. I can handle the hate.
Okay.
Are you
Who are you talking to?
Are you impressed with the way Josh and Sandy are handling this? Their unbelievable resolve, but also their ability to. I know Josh said that they're different, off camera, and I get it. I guess what I'm asking is,
yeah, you are smart enough to know that I lost a child and used black humor. You black humor and speaking about it are totally, quote, we are normal people. I'm a little paranoid. I'm an optimist, and we are normal people. What you
Because I feel like this is a kind of case that needs to be screamed to the mountaintops, and Josh and Sandy are just so just
civilized about it,
correct. We're not
civilized.
civilized like that. Yes, but
Yeah, most people would have given up or gone crazy by now, I think.
Definitely.
So Josh and Sandy, how have you not done either? How have you not given up, and how have you not
We're
gone
not
crazy?
leaving our daughter.
Say again?
We're not leaving our daughter. We are not walking away. I've tried personally, and Sandy has too, I'm sure. What would it take to get us to walk away? And when I think about it, I feel worse than I feel now talking about it. Much worse. And like I said, the gentleman the other night who was a former Brooklyn prosecutor who was trying to convince me that I'm wasting my time and money, I should see a lawyer who has a different opinion. I didn't say it to him. Would you walk away from your son, your daughter?
That's
and
not
yes,
an
it's cost
option. It's not
Sorry?
an option.
No.
That option doesn't exist.
And Josh, you appear to be in very good shape and a relatively young man. You're not going anywhere anytime soon, as is your wife, Sandy. Before we get to your final comments, I'd like to get Gavin. How do we encapsulate all this? And again, STS Nation, there you see it by Spoon Man. What can we all do to help? I know you've mentioned it, but just to reiterate it and your final thoughts here.
Yeah, I think that Josh and Sandy still have a long battle ahead of them. I think that they're realists about that. Josh already talked about how it'll go to the state Supreme Court either way. So this is going to be a long and expensive battle. They need a couple of things. They need people to sign the change.org petition. They need people to share the story everywhere you possibly can through social media, share it with your friends, talk about it over coffee, do all the things to share the story. And then if you can, spare a few bucks, go to the GoFundMe and help them out. There are a lot of people that are helping the Greenbergs. Mr. Brennan, for example, is doing it pro bono, and I think you guys are just covering his expenses, but this is still a very expensive fight, and they're fighting a Goliath with they're a bottomless pockets. There are no bottoms to their pockets. So if you can help the Greenbergs to fight that Goliath, go to the GoFundMe page and chip in a few bucks.
And look at this.
Yeah, but David won against Goliath.
Yes, he did.
Yes, and the Greenbergs are the Goliaths. Justice for Dan Markell chiming in. God bless the Greenbergs, followed by Ellen Greenberg will get justice, followed by Cindy, who's out in Pullman, Washington, near the Moscow, Idaho murders. It's obvious you two love each other. First time I've ever kissed and look at that. Look at that.
No,
Josh kissing is on the cheek, on camera. I'm saying, and I see you. A new member. We love that. Sandy, your final thoughts. And Carmela instituted a law on this show. I must ask the guests how we can help them. How can I help you? And your final thoughts.
You're helping us tonight by spreading the word and continuing to encourage your followers to follow us. We have a Facebook page called Justice for Ellen. And as beat up as I am and as difficult as this is, I will continue to try to clear my daughter's name, because Ellen is our daughter. But it could be your daughter, it could be your mother, it could be your sister, it could be your friend. She doesn't have a voice, and we need to speak loudly for her.
When I talk to people, I say, tell your children, if anyone hurts them, they should come right to you. There's an abuser and a homicidal maniac out there somewhere. And they're going to take me away for libel tomorrow. But Joel, you have helped us. We have 2 new contacts. That's why we like to talk.
Yeah, and I'd
Two
like to
people-
actually bring you back with them, maybe even as soon as next Sunday night.
Yeah.
Or I'll have them. We'll talk about how to, how to actually produce the show. Carmela will have her thoughts too. Dog Defender writes, Joel, you moron. Seriously? He didn't want anyone. I added the moron part. He didn't want anyone to know he was a narcissistic abuser. Followed here by they are 2 amazing souls. And we'll end it here with justice for Dan Markel. We know who killed her. Josh and Sandy, it was a pleasure to meet you. There are angels on this earth. Gavin Fish, by the way, you can tell just by listening to him and speaking with him, he's one of those. He's a rare human, right, Josh? He doesn't seem like he wants much other than to actually help.
Gavin is special.
You are.
And
You
someday,
are.
if I could, I would back him and his podcast. But right now, I can't. And maybe I never will be able
Well,
to.
you can, Joel.
And
You can.
Gavin, what's the best way? I know you're having, a hard time keeping your podcast going because you're trying to raise a family, as am I. How can STS Nation support Gavin Fish?
I've taken a hiatus from the YouTube channel. I think the way I said it was for the foreseeable future, but I'm honestly missing it so much. So I'll be back on YouTube pretty quickly. So if you guys don't mind, head on over, just look for my name and give me a subscribe.
You mentioned something before, the way we behave. If I was to be jumping up and down on this desk as some sort of lunatic or maniac, would anyone believe me? And that's something I just don't understand. Why do so many people believe Sandy and I and not the government officials they elected?
Well said.
Well said.
Cindy Hollenbeck.
May I say one thing, just because he always accuses
tell
me.
Joel to be quiet.
I never let, when he wants to finish talking, I always have one more thing to say. But I have to tell you this, that you also, when we are finished with the live show here, we are on YouTube with the same program. And don't get discouraged if we don't get 100,000 people watching this tonight, because
I'll get discouraged, but go on.
He will get discouraged, but the STS Nation, as Joel calls his people, his audience, are just coming off a very, very, very made for movies trial in South Carolina, and everybody was so hooked on it. And we had like 100,000 people watching it at once at one point. So don't get discouraged, because that also was building up. We have to build this up. More and more people will hear about it as we talk more and more about it.
And as the great Steve Cohen says, a rising tide lifts all ships. We will hopefully rise that tide. Cindy Hollenbeck writes, when you lose someone like this, you have no choice but to deal with it. The Greenbergs have grace. Followed by a final comment from Jay McHugh. Joel, it sounds like your mom is Hungarian. My mom was Hungarian too. Carm, can you say something in Hungarian and then we'll wrap it up? Can you wish them?
No, I will do it in 1 minute. Minden jót és jó estét.
There's your answer. She speaks Hungarian. This woman speaks 6 languages fluently, and she's quite the inspiration.
But I cannot spell.
And Carmela is a pit bull. I'm going to get her on Josh Shapiro's ass, the governor of the Commonwealth, the great state of Pennsylvania.
Tell him hello for me when you talk to him.
I will. Gavin, you're, as my mother would say, do you want to say the line I'm about to deliver? I know what you're going to say. You're
Oh, I know. I always say.
Carmela always says you're a gentleman and a scholar. So I will say that in place of her.
And I'll give you a title, honorary mensch.
Thank you.
An honorary mensch. And
thank you.
Josh and Sandy, it was a pleasure. We will be in touch, all of us, off camera. A quick programming note, we are going to be live every night this week, I think, as far as I know. We've got Eric Bland on the show tomorrow night, obviously one of the big names in the Alec Murdaugh trial. He's coming back tomorrow night, along with Pete Strom, who is a former U.S. attorney, speaking of U.S. attorneys. And they are going to give us their take, a look back at the Murdaugh trial. We're also going to have a panel of ex-cons telling us what life is like in the big house for Alec Murdaugh. That coming up as well. And, of course, every Friday, We've got Detective Phil Waters, who's investigated over 400 homicides. He will be there this Friday. Until then, love you, America.
And we love
Everyone-
the Greenbergs.
And Greenberg's, hang on one second, as Gavin too.